I understand you need a version of this text that will work well with CapCut AI voice. I'll revise it to be more voice-friendly while keeping the same story and emotional impact. I'll use simple language and proper punctuation to ensure compatibility. The twisted wreckage of a military prototype aircraft, hidden in an abandoned hangar, its cockpit containing classified technology worth over $320 million and documents that would expose a secret government program reaching the highest levels of national security. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something special for you. The harsh winter of 2023 will forever be burned into my memory as the season that nearly destroyed everything I had worked to build for my children. I'm Elena Foster, a single mother of two wonderful kids, Olivia and Noah. 3 months ago, I inherited a rundown aircraft hangar outside Pinecrest, Maine from my estranged uncle Walter Foster, a man I'd met only twice in my life. My childhood was marked by money problems. My parents worked multiple jobs, moving between small apartments whenever rent increased too much. We never owned a home, never put down roots, never had the security of a place to truly call our own. By the time I finished high school, I had attended 7 different schools across 3 states. The constant moving made it nearly impossible to form lasting friendships and gave me a strong desire for stability that would shape every choice I made as an adult. I worked my way through community college as a waitress, saving every extra dollar for a down payment on a modest home, where my future children would never know the stress of midnight moves and constantly changing schools. I met David Reynolds. During my final semester, a charming engineering student with big dreams and a winning smile. We married young, bought a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of Pinecrest, and I had Olivia when I was 24. Noah came 2 years later, and for a brief, wonderful moment, I had everything I'd ever wanted: a loving husband, 2 healthy children, and a home with our name on the deed. Then David's company moved him to their Singapore office. The promotion was too good to refuse, but I couldn't bear to uproot our children and subject them to the unstable childhood I'd experienced. We tried long distance for 18 months before David met someone else. The divorce was friendly but heartbreaking. He sends regular child support payments, but the emotional loss left deep wounds that haven't fully healed. For 7 years, I've raised Olivia and Noah alone, working as an office assistant at Pinecrest Community Hospital while taking online courses in medical billing to increase my pay. Every dollar has been carefully planned, every expense reviewed, every purchase questioned. Could we afford new winter boots and still make the mortgage payment? Could I delay the car repairs another month to cover Olivia's school trip? Could we stretch the groceries a few more days until the next paycheck arrived? The hospital job provided steady income and health insurance, but barely enough to cover our basic needs. I'd been stretching myself thin for years, working extra hours whenever possible, selling handmade crafts online during evenings, and taking seasonal retail jobs during holidays. The physical and emotional strain was huge, but the alternative, losing our home, disrupting my children's education, admitting defeat, was unthinkable. Then, in January 2023, everything fell apart at once. The hospital announced budget cuts, reducing my hours from 40 to 28 per week, a devastating 30% cut to my main income. The furnace in our 1970s house broke during the coldest winter in Maine's recent history, requiring a $4,800 replacement that emptied my emergency fund and maxed out my only credit card. Noah developed serious breathing problems that required multiple specialist visits with costs her insurance didn't fully cover. By February, I was falling behind on mortgage payments for the first time since buying the house. The bank sent increasingly stern notices, each one raising the threat of foreclosure. I applied for help programs, explored refinancing options, and even thought about renting out our spare bedroom despite worries about bringing a stranger into our home with my children. "Mom, are we going to lose our house?" Olivia asked one evening as I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by overdue bills, my calculator, and a nearly empty checkbook. At 12, she was smart enough to sense how serious our situation was despite my efforts to shield both children from adult worries. "No, sweetheart," I promised, though doubt gnawed at my confidence. "We're just going through a rough patch. Things will get better soon." But as I tucked her into bed that night, I wondered if I had just lied to my daughter. The truth was, without a financial miracle, we were 3 months from homelessness. That's when the certified letter arrived, telling me that my Uncle Walter had died at age 78 and, surprisingly, had named me as his only heir. Walter had been the black sheep of the Foster family, estranged from my father for reasons never fully explained to me. I had met him only twice, once at my parents' funeral after they died in a car accident when I was 19, and again when he unexpectedly visited shortly after Olivia was born. I remembered him as a rough, socially awkward man with hardened hands and sharp blue eyes that seemed to assess everything with suspicious intensity. He had lived alone in the woods outside Pinecrest, working as an aircraft mechanic at the small regional airport until his retirement. Family rumors suggested military service with a bad discharge, though no one knew the details, and Walter never shared information about his past. The lawyer handling Walter's estate, Theodore Blackwell, was equally mysterious over the phone. "Miss Foster, I'd prefer not to discuss the details of your inheritance until we meet in person. The property has unique features that require explanation. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" The property turned out to be 5 acres of wooded land about 12 miles outside Pinecrest, accessible only by a poorly maintained dirt road that wound through dense pine forest. The main feature was not a house as I had expected, but a huge hangar-like structure, its metal exterior worn by decades of harsh Maine winters. "Your uncle bought this property in 1991, Blackwell explained, as we stood before the imposing structure. It was originally built as a storage facility for a logging company that went bankrupt in the 1980s. The property taxes are paid through the end of the year, and there are no liens or debts. The deed will transfer to you once you sign these papers." I stared at the massive hangar, disappointment settling in my stomach. I had hoped for a house I could sell quickly, or at least land with development potential that might solve my financial crisis. This remote property with its rundown building seemed worthless, a burden rather than a blessing. What would something like this even be worth? I asked, trying to hide the desperation in my voice. Blackwell shifted uncomfortably. "Property values in this area are hard to assess. The land itself might fetch $30,000 to $40,000, but the structure," he paused. "The structure would likely need to be demolished, which would cost more than the land is worth. Your uncle was very insistent that you specifically inherit this property. He refused to consider selling it, even when his health began failing." I signed the paperwork with resignation rather than enthusiasm. Even if I could find a buyer for the land, the money wouldn't be enough to save our house. Still, partial help was better than none, so I accepted the keys Blackwell offered, a heavy ring holding what appeared to be standard door keys, alongside several unusual electronic fobs. "There's one more thing," Blackwell said as I turned to leave. "Your uncle left this letter for you. He instructed me to give it to you only after the property transfer was complete." He handed me a sealed envelope, my name written in shaky handwriting on the front. I didn't open the letter right away. The drive home, the demands of dinner preparation, homework supervision, and bedtime routines pushed it to the back of my mind. It wasn't until late that night, with both children asleep and the house quiet, that I remembered the envelope tucked in my purse. The single page contained just 4 sentences. "The hangar holds what they've been looking for. Trust no. 1. The code is 5286117. Everything you need is in the manual. The cryptic message left me confused and slightly nervous. What could possibly be in that old hangar that anyone would be looking for? Who were they? What manual was he referring to? And what did the numbers mean? I decided to visit the property. The following weekend, without childcare options, I brought Olivia and Noah with me, presenting it as an adventure rather than a potentially disappointing exploration of our small inheritance. "Are we rich now, Mom?" Noah asked from the back seat. As we bounced down the rough access road, our aging Honda Civic struggling with the uneven terrain. "Not exactly, buddy," I replied, driving around a particularly deep pothole. "Uncle Walter left us some land and a big building. We're going to check it out today." "Like a treasure hunt?" His 7-year-old imagination immediately thought of exciting possibilities. "Sort of," I smiled into the rearview mirror. "But remember, the real treasure might just be the land itself." Olivia, more pragmatic at 12, had already grasped our financial situation better than I'd realized. "Could we sell it to pay for our house?" she asked quietly, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror. My heart ached at the adult concerns weighing on her young shoulders. "We'll see what we've got first, okay? Then we'll make a plan together." The hangar looked even more imposing up close, its corrugated metal sides stained with rust and time. A massive sliding door dominated the front, secured with multiple padlocks and what appeared to be an electronic keypad. Unusual security for a supposedly worthless property. Smaller standard doors were positioned on either side, similarly secured. Using the keys from Blackwell, I disabled the first set of locks on the personnel door on the right side. The electronic keypad remained illuminated, waiting for input. Remembering the numbers from Walter's letter, I punched in 5286117. The light turned green, and a metallic click signaled the final lock disengaging. "Wait here," I instructed the children, not knowing what we might find inside. "Let me check it out first." The door opened with a protesting groan, revealing darkness beyond. I fumbled along the wall for a light switch, finding one after several seconds of blind searching. When the lights flickered on, the sight before me stole my breath completely. The hangar's cavernous interior housed a partially disassembled aircraft, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Its sleek lines and unusual configuration suggested advanced technology, though large sections of the fuselage were damaged, revealing complex internal systems. The nose section appeared relatively intact, while the rear portion showed evidence of catastrophic damage. Surrounding the aircraft was an organized workshop containing specialized tools, multiple computer workstations, filing cabinets, and glass-fronted storage units filled with components I couldn't identify. Every surface was meticulously organized, labeled, and maintained, a stark contrast to the hangar's weathered exterior. "Mom?" Olivia called from outside. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," I called back automatically, still trying to process what I was seeing. "You can come in, but don't touch anything." Both children fell silent as they entered, their eyes widening at the unexpected scene. Noah broke the silence first. "Is that a spaceship?" The question jolted me back to reality. What exactly had my uncle left me? And more importantly, was it even legally mine? Aircraft, especially unusual ones, surely had registration requirements, ownership documentation, possibly even classified restrictions. The uncomfortable possibility that I had just inherited something illicit began to take root. "It's some kind of airplane," I answered cautiously. Uncle Walter was an aircraft mechanic. He must have been working on this. We spent the next hour exploring the hangar, carefully avoiding direct contact with the aircraft itself. The organization was impressive. Every tool had a designated place. Every component was labeled with identification numbers. Every workstation had specific functions clearly indicated by signage. Whatever my uncle had been doing here, he had approached it with methodical precision. In a small office area partitioned from the main space, I found what must be the manual Walter had mentioned in his letter, a thick binder labeled Project Nighthawk, Technical Specifications, and Component Analysis. The binder contained hundreds of pages of technical diagrams, mathematical calculations, and engineering notes, most beyond my comprehension. Tucked inside the front cover was another envelope with my name on it, a longer letter from Walter. That would begin to explain the extraordinary situation I had inherited. "Elena," it began, "if you're reading this, I've died before completing my work. I'm sorry for the burden I'm placing on you, but there was no one else I could trust. What you've found is a prototype aircraft developed under classified military contract by Meridian Aerospace between 1987 and 1989, officially designated the XF-117N. It was part of a next-generation stealth program that was publicly canceled, but secretly continued under Operation Nighthawk. The letter explained that Walter had been a senior engineer on the project, until discovering that certain technologies developed for the aircraft were being illegally sold to foreign governments by high-ranking military officials and executives at Meridian Aerospace. When he threatened to expose the corruption, he was framed for the theft of classified components, dishonorably discharged from the Air Force, and nearly imprisoned. The aircraft crashed during a test flight in 1990, Walter's letter continued. The official report blamed pilot error, but I knew it was sabotage. They needed to destroy evidence after I began asking questions. I located the crash site before the recovery team arrived and managed to transport key components to this facility. What you see represents approximately 60% of the original aircraft, including the advanced avionics suite and the prototype quantum positioning system that made Nighthawk revolutionary. According to Walter, the technology contained in the aircraft systems was decades ahead of its time. The quantum positioning system alone would be worth billions on today's market, allowing for navigation without satellite reference and completely undetectable transportation. Other systems included advanced materials with radar-absorbing properties, still classified, and artificial intelligence interfaces that predated current technology by 30 years. I've spent the last 3 decades documenting everything, rebuilding what I could, and gathering evidence of the corruption that buried this project. The names, dates, and transactions are all recorded in the red security box under the main workbench. This technology belongs to the American people, not to the corrupt officials who tried to sell it for personal gain. Now it belongs to you. The letter ended with a warning that felt like ice water in my veins. They never stopped looking for this aircraft. Elena, if they discover you have it, they will come for you and the children. Trust no one until you've spoken with Margaret Lawson at the Inspector General's office. The contact protocol is in the security box. Be careful and forgive me for making you part of this. I stood in the silent hangar, the letter trembling in my hands, as the full implications crashed over me. My uncle hadn't left me a worthless property. He'd left me a classified military aircraft potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars, along with evidence of corruption reaching the highest levels of government and defense contractors. I hadn't inherited an asset. I'd inherited a target. As if confirming my fears, Noah called from across the hangar, "Mom, there are cars coming." I rushed to the small window where he was standing. Through the trees, I could see dust rising from the access road, vehicles approaching quickly. Instinct rather than reason took over. I gathered both children, grabbed the binder and Walter's letters, and hurried to the security box he'd mentioned. Inside I found a sealed plastic container labeled evidence, a satellite phone, a USB drive, and detailed instructions for contacting Margaret Lawson. "We need to leave right now," I told the children, trying to keep my voice calm despite the panic rising in my chest. "We're going out the back way." A smaller door at the rear of the hangar opened onto dense forest. Walter's instructions mentioned an emergency exit route, a narrow trail, leading to a secondary road approximately half a mile through the woods. We had barely disappeared into the tree line when I heard vehicles arriving at the hangar, doors slamming, and voices calling commands. Clutching Olivia's and Noah's hands, I led them as quickly and quietly as possible through the underbrush, following barely visible markers on trees that Walter had placed to indicate the escape route. Behind us, I heard the hangar door being forced open and angry voices discovering that someone had been there recently. We reached the secondary road just as shouts indicated our absence had been discovered. An old Jeep was hidden under a camouflage tarp exactly where Walter's instructions said it would be, keys in the ignition. Within minutes, we were driving away from the property on back roads, my children silent with confusion and fear, while I grappled with the impossible situation we now faced. "Mom, who were those people?" Olivia finally asked as we merged onto the highway, heading away from Pinecrest. "I don't know exactly," I answered truthfully. "But Uncle Walter left us something important, something valuable that some people want to take away." "Are we in danger?" Her voice was small, frightened. I wanted to lie, to protect them from the harsh reality, but the situation demanded honesty. "We might be for a little while, but we're going to find help." Uncle Walter told us exactly who to contact. Noah, confused but trusting, asked the most difficult question: "Are we going home?" The weight of the answer crushed my heart. Our modest house with its failing furnace and underwater mortgage had been the center of our universe, the stability I had fought so desperately to provide. Now it was the first place anyone would look for us. "Not right away, buddy. We're going on a trip first, an important one." The satellite phone contained only one pre-programmed number. Following Walter's protocol precisely, I waited until we were 50 miles from Pinecrest before pulling into a truck stop and making the call. A woman's voice answered on the second ring. "Authentication code?" I read the sequence from Walter's instructions. "Verified," she responded. "Location?" I gave her the truck stop address. "Remain there. Northeast corner of the parking lot. Silver Suburban will arrive in approximately 40 minutes. Flash headlights twice when you see it approach." The call ended abruptly, leaving me with two confused, frightened children and 40 minutes to wait, wondering if I was placing our lives in the hands of allies or enemies. Walter's warning echoed in my mind: "Trust no one until you've spoken with Margaret Lawson." The Silver Suburban arrived exactly when promised. After verifying the vehicle with the headlight signal, a woman in her 60s emerged, steel-gray haircut in a practical bob, movements precise and deliberate, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. "Elena Foster?" she asked as I approached, children clinging to my sides. "Yes. Are you Margaret Lawson?" She nodded once. Walter was a good man, one of the few who couldn't be bought or intimidated. Her eyes softened slightly when she looked at Olivia and Noah. "These must be the grandniece and grandnephew he mentioned. He worried about you all." "Did you know him well?" I asked, still uncertain whether to trust this stranger. "For 30 years. I was with the Defense Criminal Investigative Service when he first brought allegations against Meridian and certain military officials. I couldn't protect him then. The corruption went too high. But I've been helping him gather evidence ever since." She gestured toward the Suburban. "We need to move quickly. The people who came to the hangar today work for a private security firm with ties to the original conspiracy. They've likely already identified you through property records." "How did they know to come today, specifically when we were there?" Margaret's expression darkened. "The attorney, Blackwell. He's been on their payroll for years, monitoring Walter. He probably called them as soon as you left his office." The betrayal stung, though I barely knew Blackwell. More concerning was how quickly our safety had been compromised. "Where are we going?" I asked as we transferred our few belongings to the Suburban. A secure location where you can review everything Walter left you. Then you'll need to make some decisions. She glanced at the children. Difficult ones. The secure location turned out to be a renovated farmhouse approximately 3 hours from Pinecrest, situated on 40 acres of private land with state-of-the-art security systems. Disguised as ordinary farm equipment, Margaret explained that it served as a safe house for whistleblowers and witnesses in sensitive cases, maintained by a network of current and former government oversight officials who operated outside official channels. The corruption Walter uncovered 30 years ago has metastasized, she explained once the children were settled in a bedroom with snacks and a television. What began as a handful of officials selling military technology has evolved into a shadow operation controlling billions in black budget funds, influencing defense policy, and eliminating anyone who threatens their interests. She spread Walter's documents across a large table, organizing them with the efficiency of someone who had reviewed them many times before. Walter managed to salvage the most revolutionary components from the aircraft before the official recovery team arrived. He suspected sabotage and wanted to preserve evidence, but what he found was far worse: deliberate technological suppression. "I don't understand," I said, examining diagrams that meant nothing to my untrained eye. The quantum positioning system developed for Nighthawk made GPS technology obsolete before GPS was even fully implemented. The stealth materials reduced radar signatures to levels we still haven't achieved publicly. The artificial intelligence navigation system could outperform human pilots in any condition. All of it was buried, not because it failed, but because certain interests could make more money by developing and selling these technologies incrementally over decades. The magnitude of the conspiracy was difficult to comprehend. And Uncle Walter kept all this in that hangar for 30 years? How was it never discovered? Walter was paranoid and brilliant in equal measure, Margaret replied. The property was purchased through untraceable shell companies. The hangar's exterior was deliberately maintained to look abandoned. He installed countermeasures against thermal imaging, signal detection, and surveillance that would impress the NSA. Most importantly, he only worked on the aircraft intermittently and maintained his public life as a simple mechanic at the regional airport. "So what happens now?" I asked, the weight of my inheritance becoming increasingly clear. What am I supposed to do with a partially reconstructed classified aircraft and evidence of government corruption? Margaret studied me carefully. That depends on what matters most to you. There are several options, each with significant consequences. She outlined 3 possibilities, none of them simple or safe. First, we could contact specific journalists and Congressional Oversight Committee members, releasing all evidence publicly in a coordinated disclosure. This option carried the highest personal risk, but would ensure the conspiracy became public knowledge. Second, we could negotiate with legitimate elements within the Department of Defense, returning the aircraft and evidence in exchange for immunity, witness protection, and financial compensation for the technology. This path offered more security but no guarantee that justice would be served. The third option was to sell the technology through intermediaries to private aerospace companies not involved in the original conspiracy, potentially securing hundreds of millions of dollars but abandoning the pursuit of justice altogether. Walter believed the technology belonged to the American people, Margaret concluded. But he also understood the danger of confronting these particular people directly. That's why he left the decision to you. I thought of my children sleeping in the next room, of our modest home now potentially lost forever, of the life I had struggled to build suddenly shattered by an inheritance I never wanted. The responsible choice seemed obvious: take the safest path, secure our future, and leave the pursuit of justice to others. But something in Walter's letter kept returning to my thoughts. This technology belongs to the American people, not to the corrupt officials who tried to sell it for personal gain. I need time to think, I told Margaret. And I need to explain some of this to my children. They deserve to understand why their lives have been upended." She nodded sympathetically. "Take the night, but we'll need to move again tomorrow." Now that they know you've accessed the hangar, they'll be tracking all possible movements. That night, after explaining a simplified version of our situation to Olivia and Noah, I sat alone reviewing Walter's documentation. The technical specifications remained largely incomprehensible, but the evidence of corruption was meticulously organized: financial transactions, recorded conversations, internal memos, and witness statements compiled over 3 decades. Walter had dedicated his life to exposing this conspiracy, sacrificing his reputation, career, and relationships in pursuit of justice. By morning, I had made my decision. I couldn't dishonor Walter's sacrifice by choosing the easy path. The technology did belong to the American people, and the officials who had buried it needed to be held accountable. We would pursue a modified version of the first option, working with Margaret to release the evidence publicly while ensuring our safety through carefully structured anonymity protocols. When I explained my decision to Margaret, her expression revealed both approval and concern. "It won't be easy. These people have resources and connections that make them exceptionally dangerous. They've eliminated whistleblowers before and made it look like accidents or natural causes, which is exactly why they need to be exposed," I replied, more certain with each passing moment. "Walter spent 30 years building this case. I can't walk away from that legacy just because it's dangerous." "Then we need to implement immediate security measures," Margaret said, activating her satellite phone. "Starting with getting you and the children new identities." Within hours, our transformation began. Hair was cut and dyed, distinctive clothing replaced, identification documents altered. Olivia and Noah, understanding the seriousness of our situation more clearly now, cooperated with remarkable resilience. By afternoon, we were in a different vehicle with different names, heading toward a new safe house in a different state. "What about our home?" Olivia asked as state lines blurred outside our windows. "All our stuff, my books, Noah's toys?" The question pierced my heart. In the chaos and danger, I hadn't fully processed what we were leaving behind: photo albums, family heirlooms, the physical artifacts of our life together. "We'll get new things," I promised, though the words felt hollow. "And maybe someday, when this is all over, we can go back." But we both knew that someday might never come. We had crossed a threshold into a new reality where our past lives existed only in memory. The weight of that loss settled over the car like a heavy blanket, muffling conversation and amplifying the sound of tires on asphalt. That evening, in a nondescript motel room paid for with cash, I watched my children sleeping and confronted the full magnitude of what I had chosen. For the sake of justice, for the honor of an uncle I barely knew, I had uprooted my children from the only stability they had ever known and plunged them into a life of perpetual movement and false identities. The doubt that flooded my mind was overwhelming. Had I made an unforgivable mistake? The satellite phone buzzed with an incoming message, Margaret checking our status. I stepped into the bathroom to reply, confirming our safe arrival at the designated location. Her response was immediate and alarming. "Be prepared to move again at first light. Initial disclosure to Washington Post contact compromised. New extraction team will arrive 0600. The words sent ice through my veins. Already, our carefully constructed plan was unraveling. Someone Margaret trusted had betrayed us, just as Blackwell had betrayed Walter. The conspiracy's reach was even more extensive than we had anticipated. Sleep became impossible. I sat in a chair between the door and my children's bed, Walter's evidence secure in a backpack at my feet, wondering if I would recognize danger. When it arrived, would the extraction team at 6 a.m. be allies or enemies? How could I possibly know whom to trust? As dawn approached, I made another decision, perhaps the most difficult yet. Margaret's network was compromised. Continuing to follow her protocols meant placing our lives in increasingly uncertain hands. We needed to disappear completely, not just from the conspirators but from everyone connected to Walter's evidence. At 5:30 a.m., 30 minutes before the extraction team was scheduled to arrive, I woke Olivia and Noah. "Change of plans," I whispered, helping them dress quickly. "We're leaving now, just the three of us." We slipped out the back of the motel, avoiding security cameras, and walked 3 blocks to a bus station. Using cash from the emergency funds Margaret had provided, I purchased tickets to a destination in the opposite direction from our planned route. By the time anyone realized we had gone off-grid, we would be halfway to a new temporary identity of my own creation. The conspiracy Walter had uncovered remained dangerous and powerful. The technology he had preserved was still revolutionary. The evidence he had gathered still deserved public disclosure. But my children's safety had to come first. We would find another way to expose the truth, a way that didn't require placing our lives in anyone else's hands. As the bus pulled away from the station, Olivia looked at me with eyes far older than her 12 years. "Are we on our own now, Mom?" I nodded, the weight of complete responsibility settling firmly on my shoulders. "Yes, but we've always been a good team, haven't we?" Noah, half asleep against my side, mumbled, "The best team." "And we've got something important," I added, patting the backpack containing Walter's evidence. "Something that's going to help a lot of people when we figure out how to share it safely." The dawn light painted the landscape in shades of possibility as we rolled toward an uncertain future. I had inherited more than a crashed plane and military technology. I had inherited a mission, a purpose larger than my personal struggles. Somewhere in the complex web of corruption and power, there would be a path forward, a way to secure justice for Walter, safety for my children, and perhaps even a new beginning for our little family. The road ahead would be difficult, the challenges enormous, the dangers real. But for the first time since receiving Walter's cryptic letter, I felt something unexpected taking root alongside the fear and uncertainty, hope, not just for our survival, but for our capacity to make a difference, to stand against powerful forces and hold them accountable. Elena Foster, broke single mother, had disappeared. In her place was a woman with purpose, determination, and the most valuable military technology in America hidden in her backpack. The transformation had begun. Where it would lead remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun filtered through the greasy windows of a rural truck stop diner as I sipped lukewarm coffee and watched my children pick at plates of pancakes. 17 days had passed since we'd fled from the extraction team, Margaret Lawson had arranged. 17 days of constant movement, budget motels paid in cash, and the gnawing uncertainty of being completely alone with a backpack full of classified military secrets worth millions. "Mom, can I have more syrup?" Noah asked, his voice quiet to avoid drawing attention. Even at 7, he had adapted to our new reality with remarkable speed, instinctively understanding the need for discretion. "Of course, honey," I signaled. The waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who barely glanced our way as she slid the sticky bottle across the table. Olivia studied a road map spread beside her plate, tracing potential routes with her finger. At 12, she had appointed herself our navigation specialist, memorizing back roads and small towns where we might blend in temporarily. "I think we should head west next," she suggested softly. "The mountains have more small communities where people don't ask questions." I nodded, impressed by her strategic thinking while mourning the childhood experiences she should be having instead. School projects, soccer games, sleepovers with friends. Both my children had been forced to grow up too quickly, their innocence another casualty of my fateful decision to honor Walter's quest for justice. The television mounted in the corner of the diner switched from weather to breaking news, catching my attention. The image showed our modest house in Pinecrest, now surrounded by police vehicles and official-looking SUVs. The caption below read, "Federal agents search home of woman linked to stolen military technology." I signaled for the check immediately, anxiety tightening my chest. We had avoided all forms of media since going off-grid, knowing that disconnection was essential to our safety. This unexpected glimpse of our former life confirmed that the conspiracy reached exactly as far as Walter had warned. They had turned the full force of federal law enforcement against us. "We need to move," I whispered, gathering our few belongings. "Now." Outside, our latest vehicle, a 15-year-old station wagon purchased for cash from a private seller who asked no questions, waited in the far corner of the parking lot. I performed the security check Walter's manual had described, walking casually around the vehicle looking for signs of tampering, checking tire pressure visually, and examining the dust pattern on the hood for evidence of recent disturbance. Satisfied it hadn't been compromised, I ushered the children inside and pulled onto the highway within minutes. "They were at our house, weren't they?" Olivia asked as the truck stop disappeared behind us. "Yes," I answered truthfully. "But they don't know where we are now. We've been careful." The question that remained unspoken was how long we could continue this nomadic existence. Our cash reserves were dwindling despite careful budgeting. The children needed stability, education, medical care, and the evidence in my backpack, Walter's life's work, remained unexposed. The corruption he had dedicated his life to revealing still safely hidden behind walls of power and influence. We needed a new strategy, one that didn't rely on Margaret's compromised network, but still achieved Walter's goal of exposing the truth. More importantly, we needed security and stability for the children. The original three options Margaret had presented now seemed naively simplistic. The reality required something more nuanced, more creative, and ultimately more daring. That night, in yet another anonymous motel room, I spread Walter's documents across the bed after the children had fallen asleep. The technical specifications for the quantum positioning system remained incomprehensible to me, but the system's revolutionary implications were clear even to a layperson. According to Walter's notes, the technology could provide absolute positioning without satellite reference, function underwater and underground where GPS failed, and operate without emitting detectable signals. In today's market, such technology would be worth billions, completely transforming navigation for everything from military applications to civilian transportation. The artificial intelligence navigation interface that accompanied it was equally revolutionary, capable of processing environmental data and making complex navigational decisions faster than any human pilot. Why had this technology been buried? Walter's evidence painted a disturbing picture. The officials and executives involved had realized they could make far more money by suppressing the quantum system and rolling out incremental improvements to existing GPS technology over decades. Meanwhile, they sold components of the advanced technology to foreign entities, creating a lucrative black market while maintaining America's official technological position through controlled advancement. The corruption was breathtaking in its scope and cynicism. It had cost lives, not just the test pilot whose crash had been engineered, but subsequent military personnel who had died in operations, where the suppressed technology could have made the difference between success and failure. It had cost taxpayers billions in redundant research and development. It had compromised national security through unauthorized technology transfers to potential adversaries. And now it was costing my children their childhood, their security, their future. I carefully photographed each document using a prepaid phone purchased specifically for this purpose, then uploaded the images to encrypted cloud storage using public Wi-Fi access from the motel parking lot. The original documents went back into their waterproof case, secured in the backpack that never left my possession. By morning, I had formulated a new approach, one that would require precision timing, perfect execution, and more courage than I had ever needed before. It would be dangerous, but it offered something our current situation did not: a definitive endpoint. "We're changing direction," I told the children over breakfast. "We've been running, but that's not a solution. It's time to take control of this situation." Olivia's eyes widened. "Are we going to the police?" "Not exactly," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "The people looking for us have influence with regular law enforcement. We need to go higher, to people who oversee the entire system." "Like the president?" Noah asked, his voice lifting with childish excitement at the prospect. "More like the people who make sure everyone follows the rules, even the president," I explained. "But first, we need to prepare, really prepare." Our preparation began with research, using public library computers and carefully managed online sessions. I identified the key oversight entities within the federal government: inspectors general offices, congressional committees, independent regulatory bodies. Walter's evidence implicated officials across multiple agencies, but the core of the conspiracy centered around specific programs within the Department of Defense and their connections to private contractors. I mapped the relationships between these entities, identifying potential allies and definite adversaries. Most importantly, I studied the protocols for whistleblower protection within each system, looking for the safest entry point to introduce Walter's evidence. The research took days, conducted in small segments across different locations, to avoid establishing patterns that might be tracked. Simultaneously, I began liquidating small portions of the emergency resources Margaret had provided. The cash and prepaid cards were useful for immediate needs, but establishing a secure long-term solution for the children required more substantial funds. I reluctantly sold one of the non-essential components Walter had salvaged from the aircraft: a specialized cooling system that had independent value to certain technology companies. Through an anonymous online marketplace and a complex exchange involving cryptocurrency, I converted the component into $43,000, enough to establish a financial foundation for whatever came next. The transaction was risky, potentially creating a trail that could be followed, but the need for financial security outweighed the temporary increase in danger. Most critically, I established a fail-safe system to ensure Walter's evidence would become public, regardless of what happened to me. The complete documentation was uploaded to multiple secure locations, with automated release protocols triggered if I failed to enter confirmation codes at specified intervals. Instructions for accessing and interpreting the evidence were prepared for select journalists, oversight officials, and public interest attorneys, ready to be delivered automatically if the worst occurred. "Are we ever going to have a normal life again?" Olivia asked one evening as we reviewed roadmaps for the next leg of our journey. The question cut through my strategic planning, reminding me what was truly at stake. "We will," I promised, pulling her close, a better one than before. "What we're doing matters, Olivia. It's bigger than just us, because of what Uncle Walter found. Yes, he discovered something wrong and spent his whole life trying to make it right. Now it's our turn to finish what he started. And when we do, we won't have to hide anymore." "I miss my friends," she whispered, vulnerability breaking through her brave facade. "I miss our house and my books, and knowing where I'm going to sleep every night." Noah, listening from his bed across the room, added softly, "I miss Dad." The mention of David sent a pang through my chest. He remained completely unaware of our situation, still sending child support payments to a bank account we could no longer safely access, probably wondering why his weekly video calls with the children had suddenly ceased. Contacting him would create an unacceptable risk. His communications would certainly be monitored if authorities had connected him to our disappearance. "I know this is hard," I acknowledged, gathering both children into a tight embrace. "But I need you to trust me a little longer. We're going to fix this, and then we can build something new, something even better than what we had before. Whether they believed me or simply needed to believe, both children nodded, their trust a responsibility that weighed heavier than the classified technology in my backpack. The next phase of our plan required more direct action. Walter's documentation included contact protocols for trusted individuals within the oversight system, people he had carefully vetted over decades, whose integrity had been tested and confirmed through multiple interactions. 3 names in particular appeared repeatedly in his notes, identified as primary assets for disclosure scenarios. The first was Congressman Arthur Richardson, a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee with a reputation for ferocious independence from defense industry influence. The second was Dr. Elizabeth Winters, Technical Director for the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency's Independent Review Board. The third was Federal Judge Martin Calloway, who presided over the specialized court that reviewed classified national security cases. Approaching any of them directly would be nearly impossible given the surveillance resources arrayed against us. Instead, I developed a staged disclosure process that would bring Walter's evidence to their attention through secure, indirect channels while establishing multiple layers of protection for the children and myself. The plan began with anonymous delivery of carefully selected fragments of evidence to each target, sufficient to establish credibility without revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. Each fragment was accompanied by a secure communication protocol that would allow them to request additional information while maintaining complete anonymity for both sides of the exchange. I implemented the first deliveries using an elaborate series of cutouts, hired couriers who received packages from dead drops and delivered them to specific locations without knowing their contents or ultimate destinations. The process took weeks to complete, requiring precise timing and meticulous attention to security protocols Walter had documented in his manuals. Meanwhile, we continued our nomadic existence, never staying in one location for more than 3 nights, using cash exclusively and maintaining a constantly shifting pattern of movement. The children adapted with remarkable resilience, turning our constant relocation into a game of sorts, spotting potential surveillance, identifying secure exit routes from each new location, transforming necessary security measures into challenges to be mastered rather than burdens to be endured. 43 days after our initial disappearance from Pinecrest, the first response arrived through the secure communication channel I had established. The message was brief but profoundly significant. Evidence received. Preliminary verification complete. Requesting full disclosure package and direct contact. Security guaranteed under Protocol Avalanche. Protocol Avalanche was the highest level of whistleblower protection available within the Congressional Oversight System, a specialized program designed for cases involving classified information and extraordinary threat levels. It included secured housing, military-grade protection details, and complete anonymity during investigation phases. Most importantly, it operated outside standard federal law enforcement chains, using specially cleared personnel who reported directly to congressional leadership. The response had come from Congressman Richardson's secure channel, exactly as Walter had predicted in his notes. Richardson will respond first, he had written. Winters will verify independently before engaging. Calloway will only activate if both others confirm credibility. Within 48 hours, Dr. Winters' channel also activated. Technical specifications. Authenticate as genuine classified development. Quantum positioning system confirmed as valid suppressed technology. Full protective protocol authorized. The third confirmation from Judge Calloway arrived precisely on Walter's predicted timeline. Judicial review confirms evidence meets threshold for criminal investigation with special counsel appointment. Protective custody authorized effective immediately. The 3 independent confirmations triggered the next phase of our plan, direct contact under protected conditions. Following the security protocols specified in the communications, we traveled to a designated location in rural Vermont, a nondescript farm that concealed a sophisticated safe house maintained by the Congressional Oversight Committee. The journey required 2 days of careful movement, including multiple transportation changes and counter-surveillance measures to ensure we weren't followed. Throughout the process, I maintained constant vigilance, watching for signs of the trap I still feared might await us despite the authenticated protocols and verified communications. We arrived at the farm shortly after midnight, approaching on foot through dense woodland as instructed. Armed personnel met us at designated coordinates, their credentials matching the verification codes provided through the secure channel. Even so, I kept the children close, ready to retreat into the darkness at the first sign of betrayal. The Maine farmhouse had been converted into a secure facility with reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, and advanced surveillance systems monitoring the surrounding property. Inside, the rustic exterior gave way to a modern command center staffed by a small team of specialized security personnel. Ms. Foster, a silver-haired man, greeted me as we entered. I'm Congressman Arthur Richardson. These are my colleagues, Dr. Winters and Judge Calloway. We've been expecting you. The 3 figures Walter had identified as his most trusted contacts stood before us, their expressions grave but not unwelcoming. Richardson appeared older than his official photographs, his face lined with the strain of whatever review process our evidence had triggered. Dr. Winters, a tall black woman with close-cropped hair and penetrating eyes, carried a tablet displaying technical specifications I recognized from Walter's documentation. Judge Calloway, thin and austere in appearance, maintained a judicial reserve even in this unorthodox setting. How do I know you're really who you claim to be? I asked, still maintaining a protective position between these people and my children. Richardson nodded approvingly. Walter taught you well. Each of us will provide authentication using the phrases he established for verification. One by one, they recited specific sentences Walter had recorded in his contingency protocols, phrases that contained contextual references only the real individuals would understand. As they completed the verification process, some of my tension eased, though caution remained my default position. Your uncle's evidence has created quite a storm in certain circles, Richardson continued once the authentication was complete. Within 24 hours of our initial review, we detected multiple attempts to access our secure systems. Within 48 hours, unusual reassignments occurred across several agencies, with individuals implicated in your documentation suddenly receiving new postings outside the country. They're running, Dr. Winters added, her voice carrying the crisp precision of a technical expert. The quantum positioning system documentation alone is sufficient to trigger multiple criminal investigations. The financial transactions showing technology transfer to unauthorized foreign entities constitute treason under current statutes. Judge Calloway spoke for the first time, his voice measured and deliberate. I've authorized sealed indictments against 7 individuals based on the preliminary evidence. The full disclosure package you've provided will likely expand that number significantly. The validation of Walter's decades-long mission sent a wave of emotion through me, relief that his work wasn't in vain, pride in his persistence, and grief that he hadn't lived to see this moment. For the first time since discovering the aircraft in the hangar, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease slightly. We weren't alone anymore. What happens now? I asked, acutely aware of Olivia and Noah's exhausted faces as they struggled to process this latest development in our extraordinary journey. First, rest, Richardson replied, gesturing toward a hallway leading deeper into the house. You and your children have secure quarters prepared with everything you'll need. In the morning, we'll begin formal deposition procedures to document your testimony regarding how you came into possession of this evidence. Dr. Winters approached, kneeling to address the children directly, You must be very tired after your long journey. Would you like to see your rooms? We have some books and games available, and the kitchen can prepare whatever you'd like to eat." The simple kindness, acknowledging the children as individuals with needs and preferences after weeks of constant vigilance and deprivation, brought tears to my eyes. Noah reached for Dr. Winter's outstretched hand without hesitation, his 7-year-old instincts apparently satisfied that she was trustworthy. Olivia glanced at me for permission, receiving my nod before following. Once the children were settled in their adjoining room, I returned to the main conference area where the 3 officials waited. The atmosphere had shifted, becoming more formal as they prepared to transition from rescue to investigation. "There's something you need to understand," Richardson began, his tone grave. "The conspiracy your uncle uncovered has evolved and expanded over 3 decades. The individuals involved include current senior officials in positions with significant authority and resource control. The evidence you've provided will disrupt operations worth billions of dollars and threaten people who have never faced consequences for their actions." "The danger isn't over," Judge Calloway continued. "In some ways, it's just beginning. These people have spent decades perfecting methods to eliminate threats and obscure accountability. They've buried evidence, engineered accidents, and discredited witnesses with remarkable efficiency." Dr. Winters added the final sobering assessment. "They're already constructing the counter-narrative. According to emerging stories in several publications, you're portrayed as an unstable single mother who abducted her children after delusional episodes, possibly influenced by your mentally ill uncle who was dishonorably discharged for theft of government property. The coordinated character assassination shouldn't have surprised me, but hearing it laid out so explicitly still delivered a sharp sting. They weren't just hunting us. They were systematically destroying our credibility before we could even present the evidence. What are our options?" I asked, forcing myself to think strategically despite exhaustion and emotion. "You and your children will remain under protocol avalanche protection throughout the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings," Richardson explained. "You'll have new identities, secured housing in a location known only to the 3 of U.S., and a financial support structure that cannot be traced or compromised." "How long?" The question encompassed everything. How long in hiding? How long until justice? How long before my children could have normal lives again? The 3 exchanged glances before Judge Calloway answered with careful precision. "The investigation phase will require approximately 6 months. The classified nature of the technology involved means that subsequent legal proceedings will occur in specialized closed courts, which may expedite the timeline compared to public trials. Most likely, you're looking at 12 to 18 months before the fund will most likely. Most serious cases are resolved. A year or more of continued hiding, continued disruption, continued abnormality for my children." The timeline felt simultaneously better than our current unending uncertainty, and devastatingly long when measured against Olivia's and Noah's childhood development. "And after that?" I pressed. "What happens when the cases are resolved? Do we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders?" "That depends partly on the outcomes and partly on your preferences," Richardson replied. "The Witness Security Program can provide permanent new identities and relocation if necessary. Alternatively, once the principal threats are neutralized through prosecution, you could potentially resume your former identity with appropriate security measures in place." The options represented a fundamental choice between completely abandoning our past, including any connection to extended family, friends, and David, or returning to a version of our previous life with the permanent shadow of what we had uncovered. Neither path offered the simple restoration I had initially hoped for when deciding to honor Walter's mission. "There's one other consideration," Dr. Winters added, her expression softening slightly. "The technology your uncle preserved represents significant value to legitimate government programs, and private sector applications. As his legal heir, you have certain rights to that intellectual property once the classified status is appropriately adjudicated. The potential compensation could be substantial, likely in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The revelation stunned me into momentary silence. In all the chaos and danger, I had focused exclusively on exposing the conspiracy and ensuring our safety. The possibility that Walter's inheritance might eventually provide financial security beyond anything I had ever imagined hadn't factored into my calculations. "I don't care about the money," I said finally. "I just want my children to be safe and to have normal lives again." "The financial aspect provides options," Judge Calloway noted pragmatically. "Options create security. Security facilitates normalcy. Don't dismiss it simply because it wasn't your primary motivation." As the conversation concluded, Richardson escorted me back to the children's room, where both had already fallen into exhausted sleep. Standing in the doorway, watching their peaceful faces for the first time in weeks without the immediate fear of discovery or danger, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief at having reached relative safety, pride in their remarkable resilience, and cautious hope that the worst might finally be behind us. "They've been through so much," I whispered, more to myself than to Richardson. "Children are remarkably adaptive," he replied quietly. "And they have something many children lack in far less challenging circumstances: a parent who has demonstrated extraordinary courage and unwavering commitment to their well-being while simultaneously standing for something greater than self-interest." His words offered unexpected comfort, reframing our ordeal not as a series of misfortunes and disruptions, but as a path of principle and purpose. In honoring Walter's legacy, I had shown my children that justice matters, that truth deserves defense, even at great personal cost, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it. As Richardson left me to join my children in what would be our first truly secure rest since discovering the aircraft, I realized that amid all the losses and dangers, we had gained something precious and rare: the knowledge that we had faced an impossible situation with integrity, resilience, and solidarity as a family. Whatever came next, that knowledge would remain a foundation upon which we could build our future, whether under new identities or reclaimed ones. The conspiracy Walter had uncovered remained powerful and dangerous. The path to justice would be neither short nor simple. But for the first time since reading his cryptic letter, I felt the weight on my shoulders shift from crushing burden to meaningful purpose. We were no longer simply running from danger. We were moving toward resolution, toward justice, toward a future that honored both Walter's sacrifice and my children's right to security and normalcy. In that moment of quiet reflection, watching my children sleep in safety after weeks of constant vigilance, I finally understood what Walter had entrusted to me beyond the aircraft and evidence. He had given us the opportunity to stand for something that mattered, to make a difference in ways few ever have the chance to do. The inheritance wasn't just the technology or the documentation. It was the rare privilege of confronting corruption with truth, of replacing self-interest with principle, of demonstrating to my children through action rather than words what courage and integrity truly mean. Dawn broke over the Vermont mountains, painting the secure facility in soft golden light as I stood at the window watching the perimeter security team complete their morning patrol. 3 months had passed since our arrival at the protected compound. 3 months of detailed depositions, evidence verification, and gradual adaptation to our strange new reality of safety without freedom. "Mom, Dr. Winters is here," Olivia called from the common room. "She brought those technical books I asked about." I smiled at the excitement in my daughter's voice. During our time in protective custody, Dr. Elizabeth Winters had taken a special interest in Olivia, recognizing and nurturing her natural aptitude for engineering and mathematics. What had begun as casual conversations about Walter's technical diagrams had evolved into structured lessons that gave Olivia intellectual stimulation beyond what our restricted circumstances would normally allow. "Coming," I called back, taking a final glance at the mountain vista before turning away from the window. In the common room, Dr. Winters had spread several advanced textbooks across the table where Olivia waited eagerly. The relationship between the brilliant scientist and my precocious daughter had become one of the unexpected blessings of our confinement, a mentorship that transcended our protective custody and gave Olivia a sense of purpose and direction amid uncertainty. "Elena," Dr. Winters greeted me with a warm smile that softened her usually serious demeanor. I thought Olivia might enjoy some more advanced material on quantum mechanics. She's already mastered the fundamentals with remarkable speed. My 12-year-old daughter beamed with pride, already reaching for one of the books with the enthusiasm most children her age reserve for video games or social media. The isolation from peers her own age remained our greatest concern. But Dr. Winters' mentorship provided intellectual companionship that partially filled that void. "She gets her intelligence from her uncle," I replied, though in truth, Olivia's aptitude for technical concepts had always been evident, even before Walter's legacy entered our lives. "And her determination from her mother," Dr. Winters countered, with a knowing look. "The investigation team has a saying now: be as thorough as Elena Foster. Your attention to detail during the evidence verification process has been invaluable." The compliment warmed me, though I still struggled to see myself as anything more than a reluctant participant in circumstances beyond my control. Unlike Walter, who had chosen his mission with full understanding of the risks and sacrifices, I had inherited both the evidence and the danger without preparation or choice. Yet over these months of intense collaboration with the investigation team, I had discovered capabilities within myself that surprised me: analytical skills, strategic thinking, and a resilience that matched and sometimes exceeded that of the professional investigators. "Is Congressman Richardson back from Washington?" I asked, changing the subject. Richardson had been shuttling between our secure facility and the Capitol, carefully navigating the political aspects of the investigation while maintaining our location secrecy. "He arrived late last night," Dr. Winters confirmed. "He's bringing Noah back from his horseback riding lesson now. They should be here shortly." The 400-acre property that housed our secure facility included stables and pastures where Noah had discovered a passion for horses. The former military personnel who maintained our security had begun teaching him to ride, giving my energetic 7-year-old a physical outlet that countered the constraints of protective custody. Like Olivia's intellectual development, Noah's newfound skill represented adaptation rather than mere endurance minus growth discovered within limitation. "He's requested a full briefing with all of us this afternoon," Dr. Winters continued, her expression turning more serious. "There have been significant developments in the case." Before I could ask for details, the door opened to admit Noah and Congressman Richardson. My son's face was flushed with excitement, his typically boundless energy temporarily subdued by the exertion of his riding lesson. "Mom, I cantered today, all by myself," he announced proudly, rushing to embrace me with the uninhibited affection that reminded me daily why every sacrifice had been worthwhile. "That's wonderful, buddy," I replied, breathing in the scent of fresh air and horses that clung to his hair. These small pleasures, seeing my children discover new passions, watching them adapt and even thrive despite our circumstances, had become the touchstones that kept me grounded through the turbulent process of the investigation. Richardson watched our interaction with a grandfatherly smile before his expression shifted to match Dr. Winters' seriousness. "Elena, once the children are settled with their activities, we need to talk. Judge Calloway will be joining us via secure video link." The formal configuration, all three of Walter's trusted contacts participating simultaneously, indicated news of significant importance. Anxiety tightened my chest as I nodded acknowledgement, maintaining a calm expression for the children's benefit. 2 hours later, with Olivia absorbed in her new books and Noah happily engaged with the educational software specially designed for our secure network, I joined Richardson and Dr. Winters in the facility's conference room. Judge Calloway's austere face appeared on the secure monitor, the background of his office carefully blurred to prevent any location identification. "Thank you for joining us, Elena," Richardson began once the security protocols had been verified. "We've reached several critical milestones in the investigation that will significantly impact next steps for you and your children." Judge Calloway continued the briefing, his judicial precision evident even through the digital connection. "The sealed grand jury has returned indictments against 14 individuals based on the evidence you provided. These include 3 current Pentagon officials, 2 former military commanders, 4 executives at Meridian Aerospace, and 5 individuals connected to international technology transfers." The number exceeded even Walter's projections. His documentation had focused on 7 primary conspirators, but the investigation had expanded to include those who had joined the conspiracy in more recent years. "Arrests will begin tomorrow at 06:00 Eastern Time," Richardson added. "Simultaneous operations in 7 jurisdictions, coordinated to prevent any opportunity for escape or evidence destruction." "These are powerful people," I noted, remembering the resources that had been deployed against us in the initial weeks after discovering the aircraft. "Are you certain your operation won't be compromised?" "As certain as possible in these circumstances," Dr. Winters replied. "The investigation team has operated on a strictly compartmentalized basis. Each participant knows only their specific assignment without access to the overall operation." Additionally, Judge Calloway interjected, "We've implemented a counterintelligence operation that has been feeding disinformation through suspected channels. The individuals targeted believe the investigation has stalled due to authentication challenges with the technical documentation." The sophisticated approach reassured me somewhat, though experience had taught me that certainty was an illusion when confronting adversaries with decades of practice in protecting their interests. "What does this mean for us?" I asked, focusing on the practical implications for my children. "That's the more complex aspect of today's briefing," Richardson replied, his expression sobering further. "The prosecutions will eventually become public, though the technical details and classified aspects will remain sealed. When that happens, your identity as the source of the evidence will likely become known, despite our best efforts to keep it secret." The meaning was clear. Our current anonymity had an end date. Once our role became public, new security risks would appear no matter how many conspirators were in jail. "We need to discuss permanent witness protection," Judge Calloway stated plainly. "New identities, relocation, complete separation from your previous life." The words hit me hard despite their calm delivery. I had known this might happen from the start, had mentally prepared for it during our months in temporary protective custody. Yet hearing it presented as something that must happen now still left me struggling to breathe. "For how long?" I managed to ask, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "Permanently," Richardson confirmed gently. "The reach of this conspiracy extends into areas we're still discovering. Some of the international connections involve foreign governments who won't be stopped by U.S. prosecutions." Dr. Winters leaned forward, her expression softening with real empathy. "Elena, we understand what we're asking. To leave behind everything familiar, to raise your children under different names, to never contact friends or extended family again. These are huge sacrifices. Sacrifices that come with huge compensation," Judge Calloway added, his practical nature showing. "The technical evaluation of the quantum positioning system has been completed. As Walter's legal heir, Your ownership rights to the technology have been confirmed under special laws governing classified innovations. Richardson continued the explanation. The Department of Defense has approved a settlement agreement that acknowledges your ownership while addressing national security requirements. In exchange for complete technology transfer to authorized government programs, you will receive $320 million in secure, untraceable funds that will transfer to your new identity. The amount was shocking, far beyond anything I had expected. Even after Dr. Winter's earlier mention of possible compensation. Financial security had never been my reason for pursuing Walter's mission, but I couldn't deny the opportunities such resources would create for my children's future. The settlement doesn't solve the witness protection requirement, Judge Calloway warned. The money creates options within your new identity, but it doesn't remove the need for complete separation from your previous life. Complete separation. The phrase echoed in my mind as I thought about its full meaning. No contact with previous friends. No reconnection with extended family. No way for David to know what had happened to his children or why they had disappeared from his life. Most difficult of all, no way for Olivia and Noah to maintain connections with the people and places that had shaped their early years. What about their father? I asked, the question that had troubled me since our first days in hiding. David has rights. He loves them. They love him. The three exchanged glances before Richardson answered carefully. That's the most complicated part of your situation. Standard witness protection rules prohibit contact with anyone from your previous life, including former spouses. The risk of tracking through such connections is simply too high. But, Dr. Winters added, your case presents special circumstances. We've developed a possible approach that might allow limited, highly controlled contact under specific security measures. For the first time since the briefing began, I felt a small spark of hope amid the devastating implications of permanent identity change. What kind of approach? Judge Calloway outlined the proposal with typical precision. David Reynolds would be approached by specialized personnel, required to sign extremely restrictive non-disclosure agreements, and subjected to thorough security screening. If cleared, he would be permitted to have contact with the children, under controlled circumstances using secure communication channels. He wouldn't know your location, Richardson added. And in-person visits would require elaborate security measures at neutral locations. But it would preserve some connection between the children and their father. The proposal represented a significant exception to standard rules, a recognition of the special circumstances surrounding our case, and perhaps an acknowledgement of the extraordinary sacrifice Walter's legacy had demanded from innocent children. How soon would all this happen? I asked, trying to process the flood of information and its implications for our future. The transition to permanent witness protection would begin immediately after the arrest operations are complete. Richardson explained, about 72 hours from now. The new identities have already been established. Background histories, educational records, employment documentation, everything required for smooth integration into your new community. You've selected a location? The realization that decisions about our future had advanced so far without my input sent a flash of resentment through me. Though logically I understood the necessity of such preparations, Dr. Winters nodded. Based on careful analysis of your children's needs, your professional background, and optimal security parameters, the location offers excellent educational opportunities, a strong medical system that could use your administrative experience, and sufficient population density to provide anonymity without urban complexity. Where? I pressed, needing some concrete detail to begin processing this imminent transformation. Colorado, Richardson replied. A growing community outside Denver with the right balance of economic opportunity and security attributes. Far enough from Maine to eliminate coincidental connections, but with similar seasonal patterns to maintain lifestyle consistency for the children. Colorado. The state where Walter had built his hidden hangar and preserved the evidence that had changed our lives forever. There was a certain symmetry to establishing our new lives in the same region where this extraordinary journey had begun, though I would never be able to acknowledge that connection to anyone outside this room. The financial settlement provides options within this framework, Judge Calloway noted. You could choose not to work, focusing entirely on the children's adjustment. You could establish a business, if that appeals to you. The resources remove money constraints from your decisions. The unprecedented freedom represented by such financial security stood in stark contrast to the constraints of our new identity. Requirements, a paradox of limitless possibility within strict boundaries. After years of financial struggle and the constant stress of inadequate resources, the prospect of making choices without money pressure was almost unimaginable. I need to talk to the children, I said finally. Olivia especially. She's old enough to understand what this means, leaving everything behind, becoming someone new. Of course, Richardson agreed immediately. But the timeline remains fixed. The arrest operations cannot be delayed, and your transition must follow immediately to maintain security integrity. 3 days to prepare my children for complete transformation of their identities. 3 days to help them understand and accept that the people they had been no longer existed except in memory. 3 days to begin the process of saying goodbye to everything familiar without the possibility of actual farewells to friends, teachers, neighbors. We'll give you some time alone, Dr. Winters said gently, recognizing the emotional weight of what had been presented. The complete briefing materials are available on the secure tablet. Review them when you're ready, and we'll meet again this evening to address your questions. As they left the conference room, I remained seated, staring at the blank monitor, where Judge Calloway's face had been, trying to organize my thoughts into something coherent enough to present to my children. How could I help them understand a situation I was still struggling to comprehend myself? The mix of emotions overwhelmed me. Gratitude for the extraordinary measures being taken to ensure our safety. Resentment at the circumstances that made such measures necessary. Hope for the possibilities the financial settlement would create. Grief for the connections that would be permanently severed. And underlying everything, a profound sense of responsibility for guiding my children through this unprecedented transition. I found Olivia and Noah in the common room, their activities abandoned as they sensed the importance of the adults' meeting. Both looked up expectantly as I entered, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and worry. "Is something wrong, Mom?" Olivia asked, her perceptiveness once again detecting the emotional currents I was trying to control. "Not wrong," I answered carefully, joining them on the comfortable sofa that had become the center of our family discussions during these months of confinement. "Different. We're going to be making some big changes soon." "Are we going home?" Noah asked hopefully, his idea of home still firmly attached to our modest house in Pinecrest, despite the months of absence. The innocent question tightened my throat with emotion. "No, buddy, we're going to a new home, a different one." "In Colorado, because of Uncle Walter's airplane?" Olivia questioned, already connecting the circumstances more clearly than her younger brother. "Yes, the people who have been helping us have arranged for us to have a completely new start. New home, new schools." I hesitated before adding the most difficult part, new names. Olivia's eyes widened as she processed the implications. "We won't be the Fosters anymore?" "No, we'll have different last names. Different first names." 2. The reality of this fundamental change in identity struck me anew as I verbalized it for the children. Noah's face crumpled in confusion. "But I'm Noah. I don't want a different name." The distress in his voice broke my heart. At 7, his name was intrinsically connected to his sense of self in ways that would make this transition particularly challenging. "I know, sweetheart. You'll always be Noah to me and Olivia, no matter what your official name becomes." We'll just have different names for the outside world. Like a secret identity? He asked, his imagination recasting our situation in terms more comprehensible to a child his age. Something like that, I agreed, grateful for his adaptive framing. Like superheroes who have regular names when they're not saving people. The comparison seemed to reassure him, though Olivia remained more troubled, her greater maturity allowing her to understand the permanence and significance of what I was describing. "What about Dad?" she asked, giving voice to the question I had been dreading. "Will he know our new names? Can we still talk to him?" I explained the special arrangement being developed for David, emphasizing the unusual exception it represented while being honest about its limitations. "It will be different from before," I acknowledged. "The visits will be less frequent, and there will be special security people involved, but you'll still be able to see him. Will he understand why we disappeared?" The question revealed Olivia's concern not just for her relationship with her father, but for his emotional well-being during our unexplained absence. "He'll be told enough to understand that we didn't have a choice and that we're safe now," I assured her, though the details of exactly what David would be permitted to know remained unclear even to me. As we continued talking through the implications of our imminent transformation, I was struck by both children's resilience. They asked practical questions, expressed natural concerns, but showed none of the complete resistance or emotional collapse that might have been expected. The months of disruption and adaptation had prepared them for change in ways I hadn't fully appreciated until this moment. "Will we have a real house again?" Noah asked. "With our own bedrooms and a yard?" "Yes," I promised, drawing on the information provided in the briefing materials. "A very nice house with plenty of space for both of you, and a big yard, maybe even room for a dog." The mention of a dog, something they had repeatedly requested in our previous life, but which had never been financially feasible, brightened Noah's expression immediately. "Really? Can I have a big dog, like a retriever?" "We'll see," I replied, the familiar parental hedge transformed by the extraordinary circumstances into something approaching a promise. There will be many new possibilities in our new life. As our conversation continued into the evening, exploring the practical and emotional aspects of our imminent transformation, I realized that we had already changed in ways that transcended names and locations. The children who had left Pinecrest in fear and confusion months ago were not the same children who now discussed their new identities with cautious optimism. The woman who had inherited Walter's dangerous legacy was not the same woman who now prepared to guide her family into a carefully constructed new beginning. We had been tested beyond normal human experience, forced to rely on each other and internal resources we hadn't known we possessed. The bonds between us had strengthened through shared adversity. The values that would define our future, courage, integrity, resilience, had been forged in circumstances few families ever encounter. Whatever names we carried forward, whatever location became our home, those transformed aspects of ourselves would remain. Walter's legacy wasn't just the technology or the evidence of corruption. It was the crucible that had revealed our capacity to face impossible challenges together and emerge not just intact but somehow enhanced. 3 days later, as we prepared to board the unmarked government aircraft that would transport us to our new life in Colorado, I took one final moment with the children on the secure facility's porch, looking out at the Vermont mountains that had sheltered us during this transitional chapter. "Remember who we really are," I told them softly. "No matter what names we use or where we live, remember what we've been through together and how strong it's made us." Olivia nodded solemnly, her hand finding mine. "We're still us on the inside. That's what matters." Noah, ever practical despite his age, added, "And we get to have a dog now. That's pretty good." The simple statement startled a laugh from me, releasing some of the tension that had built during our preparations. Leave it to a 7-year-old to distill complex emotional transformations down to their practical benefits. As we walked toward the waiting aircraft, flanked by security personnel who would accompany us to our new beginning, I felt a curious mixture of loss and anticipation. We were leaving behind not just our identities, but the immediate connection to Walter's mission that had driven us for so long. The arrests had been successfully executed, the evidence secured, the prosecutions beginning their complex progression through specialized courts. Our part in that process was largely complete. What remained was the challenge of building meaningful lives within the parameters of our new identities, finding purpose beyond survival, creating connections within necessary limitations, transforming constraint into opportunity. The aircraft waited, its engines humming with potential energy, ready to carry us toward whatever awaited in Colorado. Behind us lay the fragments of lives interrupted, connections severed, identities abandoned. Ahead lay the uncertain promise of new beginnings secured by sacrifice and extraordinary circumstances. I guided my children up the steps, their hands warm and trusting in mine, their faces reflecting a complex mixture of apprehension and hope that mirrored my own emotions. Whatever came next, we would face it together, carrying within us the unalterable truth of who we were and what we had endured. The door sealed behind us with pneumatic finality. Elena Foster and her children ceased to exist except in memory and heavily secured files. As the aircraft lifted into clear mountain air, carrying us toward our carefully constructed new lives, I whispered a silent thanks to Walter for trusting me with his legacy and a quiet promise to honor that trust by helping my children transform this extraordinary disruption into unique opportunity. The sacrifice had been immense, the danger real, the losses significant. But as we rose above the mountains toward new horizons, I recognized that few parents ever have the opportunity to show their children so clearly what courage looks like in action, what integrity demands in practice, what resilience can accomplish against impossible odds. Perhaps that demonstration, more than any financial settlement or technical legacy, was Walter's most valuable gift, the chance to exemplify values rather than merely teaching them, to live principles rather than simply professing them. In that perspective, our new beginning represented not just necessity, but opportunity, the rare chance to build lives defined by purpose rather than circumstance, by conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. Whatever names we carried forward, we would carry them with the hard-earned knowledge of exactly who we were beneath those external identities. 5 years had passed since that flight from Vermont to Colorado, transforming us from the Foster family into the Camerons. Rebecca Cameron and her children Sophie and Ethan, residents of Silver Creek, a growing community 30 minutes outside Denver. Our modern craftsman-style home, with its sprawling backyard and mountain views, bore no resemblance to our modest Pinecrest house, just as our new identities bore no external resemblance to the people we had once been. "Mom, Rusty destroyed another sprinkler head," Sophie called from the backyard, where our golden retriever was proudly displaying his latest excavation achievement. I laughed despite the minor property damage, watching through the kitchen window as Sophie, formerly Olivia, attempted to scold the unrepentant dog. At 17, she had blossomed into a poised young woman whose academic achievements had already attracted attention from prestigious universities across the country. Her natural aptitude for mathematics and engineering, nurtured by Dr. Winter's early mentorship, had developed into genuine talent that placed her at the top of Silver Creek High School's advanced science program. "Third one this month," Ethan commented, joining me at the window. "Maybe we should rename him Digger." My son, now 12, retained little conscious memory of his life as Noah Foster. The transition at age 7 had been easier for him than for his sister, his adaptability allowing him to embrace our new identity with fewer complications. He remembered David, of course, and maintained the special relationship with his father. Through the secure visitation program, but Silver Creek was home in ways Pinecrest had never been for him. "I'll add sprinkler heads to the shopping list," I replied, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Small price to pay for how happy he makes you both." The dog had been our first significant purchase after settling in Colorado, a symbol of our new beginning and the expanded possibilities our changed circumstances provided. Where once every expenditure had required careful budgeting and sacrifice, our financial situation now permitted generosity and spontaneity that still occasionally caught me by surprise even 5 years later. The $320 million settlement had been carefully structured through a series of blind trusts and investment vehicles that disguised its origins while providing us with an annual income that placed us comfortably among Silver Creek's upper-middle-class families without attracting undue attention. The majority remained securely invested for the children's future, with designated portions funding educational trusts, healthcare reserves, and philanthropy through carefully anonymized channels. My official employment as a healthcare administration consultant provided both cover for our financial resources and genuine fulfillment. After years of struggling as an administrative assistant with unrealized potential, I now advised regional medical centers on operational efficiency and patient care improvements, working remotely most days from my home office with occasional travel to client facilities throughout Colorado and neighboring states. The consulting practice had begun as part of our cover story, but evolved into meaningful work that utilized skills I hadn't fully recognized in my previous life. The transformation from Elena Foster, overworked, underpaid hospital employee, struggling to make ends meet, to Rebecca Cameron, respected healthcare consultant with financial security and professional autonomy, remained somewhat surreal even after 5 years. The doorbell chimed, interrupting my reflections on our transformed lives. Sophie came in from the backyard, Rusty following with muddy paws despite her efforts to intercept him at the door. "That's probably Madeline," she said, grabbing a towel to wipe the dog's feet before he could track mud through the house. "We're working on our advanced physics project today." I nodded, feeling the familiar mix of gratitude and caution that accompanied every normal teenage activity. Each friendship, every school project, all routine interactions carried both the joy of normalcy and the shadow of our hidden truth. Sophie had adapted remarkably well, developing close friendships while maintaining the necessary boundaries our situation required, but I sometimes caught glimpses of the emotional toll this duality took on her. Opening the door revealed not Sophie's classmate, but a familiar face that immediately triggered both welcome and vigilance, Congressman Richardson, now retired from public office but still connected to the oversight of our unusual situation. His visits, though infrequent, always coincided with significant developments related to Walter's legacy. "Rebecca," he greeted me with the practiced ease of someone who never slipped on our new identities. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. Hope that's not an imposition." The casual phrasing was our established protocol for unscheduled visits carrying important information. "Not at all," I replied, ushering him inside while subtly activating the security sweep device concealed in a decorative wall panel, a precautionary measure that had become second nature over the years. Sophie recognized our visitor immediately, her expression shifting from teenage casualness to alert attention. Though only 12 when we'd entered witness security, she remembered Richardson clearly and understood that his presence signaled matters related to our former lives. "I'll reschedule with Madeline," she said without prompting, already reaching for her phone to text her friend. "Actually," Richardson interjected gently, "this concerns you directly. You might want to be part of this conversation." His words sent a flutter of anxiety through me. In 5 years of periodic updates, Richardson had never specifically included Sophie in our discussions, beyond general reassurances about our continued security. Whatever had prompted this visit involved my daughter in ways that diverged from our established patterns. Ethan, sensing the shift in atmosphere but less attuned to its significance, glanced between us uncertainly. "Should I go to my room?" Richardson addressed him with grandfatherly warmth. "How about taking that impressive dog of yours for a walk? This won't take long, and your mother can fill you in on anything you need to know afterward." Once Ethan had departed with an enthusiastic Rusty pulling at the leash, we settled in the living room, the comfortable space suddenly feeling formal with the weight of whatever information Richardson had brought. "There have been significant developments in the final prosecutions," he began, his tone measured and precise despite his retirement from official duties. "The last 3 cases have concluded with guilty verdicts across all charges. The conspiracy your uncle uncovered has been completely dismantled, with all primary participants now serving substantial sentences. The news should have brought unmitigated relief, the final resolution of the legal proceedings that had forced our transformation into the Camerons." Yet Richardson's expression and his unusual inclusion of Sophie suggested complications beyond simple closure. "That's good news," I prompted when he paused, "but clearly not the only reason for your visit." He nodded, his gaze shifting to include Sophie directly. "The technical aspects of Walter's discovery have had extraordinary developments as well. The quantum positioning system has been successfully integrated into next-generation navigation platforms, with civilian applications now moving toward controlled release through specialized licensing arrangements." Sophie leaned forward slightly, her interest piqued by the technical details. During our years in Colorado, she had independently developed interests in quantum mechanics and advanced engineering that paralleled Walter's work, though she had no way of knowing how closely her academic pursuits aligned with her great-uncle's innovations. "The Department of Defense, in consultation with the Oversight Committee, has made an unusual decision," Richardson continued. "They're establishing a specialized educational pathway for exceptionally qualified students to participate in the continued development of these technologies under appropriate security protocols." Understanding dawned slowly as I processed the implications of his careful phrasing. "You're talking about Sophie?" "Yes," he confirmed, turning to address her directly. "Your academic performance, particularly in advanced physics and computational mathematics, has been noted by those monitoring the educational trust established as part of your family security arrangement. Your aptitude in these areas is remarkably similar to your great-uncle's natural talents." Sophie's expression reflected confusion mingled with fascination. Though she knew the general outlines of why we had entered witness protection, many details of Walter's work remained unclear to her, classified beyond what even family members could know. "Are you offering me some kind of special program?" she asked, her analytical mind cutting directly to the practical implications. "More precisely, we're offering you an opportunity to continue your great-uncle's legacy under controlled circumstances," Richardson replied. "MAT has established a specialized quantum engineering program in conjunction with limited access defense research facilities. Students with appropriate security clearance and exceptional aptitude can pursue advanced degrees while contributing to the continued development of technologies derived from Walter's original innovations." The proposal was unprecedented, a carefully constructed bridge between Sophie's Cameron identity and her Foster heritage, allowing her to engage with Walter's work without compromising our security or revealing our previous identities. "Would this mean security clearances, background investigations?" I asked, immediately concerned about the implications for our carefully maintained cover identities. Richardson nodded, acknowledging the complexity. "Limited and compartmentalized. The program administrators would know only that Sophie is connected to a protected witness case, not the specific details. Her academic records have been structured from the beginning to withstand routine security verification." Sophie processed this information with remarkable poise, asking precise questions about the technical focus of the program, the security parameters, and the implications for her broader educational goals. Her maturity in navigating this unexpected connection to her previous life impressed me, even as it triggered poignant awareness of how much she had grown since our flight from Pinecrest. Would I have access to Uncle Walter's original work? She asked finally, the question revealing her deeper interest beyond academic opportunity. Portions of it, under controlled conditions, Richardson confirmed. The original technical documentation has been preserved in classified archives, with appropriate sections accessible to qualified researchers working on related technologies. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, exploring the practical and emotional implications of this unexpected opportunity. Throughout the discussion, I observed Sophie with a mixture of pride and melancholy, pride in the remarkable young woman she had become despite extraordinary challenges, melancholy at the reminder of all that had been sacrificed to bring us to this point. When Richardson finally departed, promising to send secure documentation outlining the program specifics, Sophie and I remained in the living room, processing the implications of this unexpected bridge between our past and future. "Are you okay with this?" she asked eventually, demonstrating characteristic consideration for how this development might affect our family's security and stability. "The question is whether you're okay with it," I countered gently. "This is your education, your future. The security aspects can be managed if this is something you genuinely want to pursue." She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I've always been drawn to quantum mechanics and advanced engineering without understanding why. It felt like discovering something familiar rather than learning something new." A small smile touched her lips. "Maybe there's something genetic in how our minds work, Uncle Walter's and mine." The possibility that Sophie had independently gravitated toward her great-uncle's field through some inherited intellectual affinity was both fascinating and moving. Without knowing the details of Walter's work, without conscious connection to his innovations, she had found her way to the same intellectual territory through natural aptitude and curiosity. "He would be incredibly proud of you," I said, emotion tightening my throat. "Not just for your intelligence, but for your courage through everything we've experienced." The conversation paused as Ethan returned with Rusty, both energized from their walk. My son immediately sensed the emotional undertones in the room, his perceptiveness belying his 12 years. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking between us with concern. "Everything's fine," I assured him. "Sophie has been offered a special opportunity for her education, something that might take her to MIT after graduation." His eyes widened with appropriate brotherly pride, mixed with dismay at the prospect of his sister moving across the country. "That's amazing. But Massachusetts is really far away." "It would be for college," Sophie explained, smoothly transitioning back into her role as supportive older sister. "I wouldn't leave until after next year, and I'd come back for holidays and summers." The conversation shifted to more immediate concerns: dinner plans, homework requirements, an upcoming soccer tournament where Ethan's team was competing. The extraordinary intersection of our hidden past with Sophie's potential future receded temporarily beneath the rhythms of normal family life that we had carefully constructed in Colorado. Later that evening, after both children had retired to their rooms, I sat on our back deck watching moonlight illuminate the distant mountains. The landscape had become home in ways I hadn't anticipated when we first arrived as refugees from our previous identities. What had begun as a security-driven relocation had evolved into genuine connection to this place. These mountains, this community that knew us only as the Camerons. Richardson's visit had disrupted the careful compartmentalization I had maintained between Elena Foster's life and Rebecca Cameron's existence. For 5 years, I had concentrated on building our new reality, focusing forward rather than backward, creating stability for my children within the parameters of our witness security constraints. The sudden re-emergence of Walter's legacy through Sophie's educational opportunity had reopened questions I had carefully set aside. Questions about identity, authenticity, and the nature of self beyond external names and circumstances. Who was I, truly, after these years of transformation? The struggling single mother from Pinecrest seemed increasingly distant, almost a character in someone else's story rather than my own past. Rebecca Cameron had developed genuine relationships, professional accomplishments, and community connections that felt authentically mine despite their foundation on carefully constructed fiction. Perhaps most significantly, I had discovered capacities within myself that might never have emerged without the crucible of our extraordinary circumstances. The woman who had once been overwhelmed by routine financial challenges now managed complex healthcare consulting projects, navigated sophisticated security protocols, and guided 2 children through unprecedented life transformations with a confidence that transcended either of my names. The sound of the deck door sliding open interrupted my reflections. Sophie stepped outside, wrapped in a light blanket against the mountain evening chill, and joined me on the cushioned outdoor sofa. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, making room beside me. "Too many thoughts," she admitted, settling in with her head, resting against my shoulder in a gesture that momentarily transported me back to her childhood. About Uncle Walter, about MIT, about who we really are underneath all of this. The echo of my own reflections in her words didn't surprise me. At 17, Sophie was navigating not just the normal identity formation of adolescence, but the additional complexity of constructed identities and hidden truths. "Do you ever miss being Elena Foster?" she asked quietly. "Do you ever feel like Rebecca Cameron is just a role you're playing?" The question deserved the most honest answer I could provide. At first, absolutely. Everything felt artificial and constraining. But over time, Rebecca became real to me in ways I didn't expect. The experiences we've had here, the relationships we've built, the work I do, those things are genuinely mine, regardless of what name is attached to them. She considered this thoughtfully. "I remember more than Ethan does. Sometimes I dream about our old house, about school in Pinecrest, about being Olivia. But it's starting to feel like someone else's memories, like a movie I watched rather than my own life." "That's natural," I assured her. "You were young when we made the transition. Your identity now has been shaped more by your experiences as Sophie than by your earlier years as Olivia. But which one is really me?" The fundamental question of identity emerged with adolescent intensity but philosophical depth that reflected her remarkable intellect. I turned slightly to face her more directly. "Both, neither. You're more than either name or the experiences attached to them. The continuity is in your values, your character, your capacity for growth and adaptation. Those things transcend whatever we call ourselves or wherever we live." She smiled slightly at my philosophical response. "So I'm just me, beyond the names." "Exactly. And that you is someone extraordinary, someone who has faced unimaginable challenges with remarkable courage and emerged stronger for them." We sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the mountain breeze carrying the scent of pine and distant wildflowers across our peaceful backyard. The contrast with our fearful flight from Pinecrest couldn't have been more pronounced, from desperate escape to settled peace, from financial precarity to abundant security, from reactive survival to purposeful living. "I think I want to do it," Sophie said finally. "The MIT program. Not just because it's prestigious or because it connects to Uncle Walter, but because the work itself fascinates me. The quantum positioning system could revolutionize navigation in ways that help millions of people." Her focus on the broader implications rather than personal advantage reflected a maturity and perspective that filled me with quiet pride. Whatever names we carried, whatever circumstances had shaped our journey, I had somehow raised a daughter whose moral compass pointed unfailingly toward contribution rather than mere accomplishment. Then you should pursue it, I encouraged. With appropriate security measures in place, this could be an extraordinary opportunity to build on Walter's work while creating your own legacy. What about you and Ethan? Would my being at MIT create security risks for you? Her concern for our family's well-being above her own opportunities touched me deeply. Richardson wouldn't have presented the option if the security risks weren't manageable, and Ethan and I will be fine. He's establishing his own connections here, finding his own path. The following months brought carefully structured preparations for Sophie's unique educational pathway. Specialized security briefings, compartmentalized clearance processes, and customized academic planning created a bridge between her Cameron identity and the classified aspects of Walter's work she would eventually engage with at MIT. Throughout this process, I observed a subtle transformation in my daughter, not a rejection of her Sophie Cameron identity, but an integration of that self with recovered aspects of Olivia Foster's history and heritage. She wasn't returning to her previous identity, but evolving towards something more complex and complete that honored all aspects of her extraordinary journey. As her high school graduation approached, bringing with it the imminent transition to MIT and her specialized program, Sophie's academic achievements attracted appropriate recognition within our community. The local newspaper featured her as part of a profile on exceptional graduates, celebrating her perfect GPA and acceptance to the prestigious university without any awareness of the classified program that awaited her or the remarkable family history that had made it possible. The graduation ceremony itself represented a milestone I had once feared we might never reach. My daughter completing high school with honors, surrounded by friends and teachers who knew and valued her, moving confidently toward a future bright with possibility despite the shadows of our hidden past. As Sophie crossed the stage to receive her diploma, Ethan cheered loudly beside me, his pride in his sister unreserved and uncomplicated by the complex knowledge she carried. In that moment, watching my beautiful, brilliant daughter accept recognition for her achievements as Sophie Cameron, while carrying within her the legacy of Olivia Foster and Walter's extraordinary inheritance, I felt a completion of circles that transcended our witness protection parameters. The reception following the ceremony brought congratulations from teachers, friends' parents, and community members who had become part of our Colorado life. Among them, moving unobtrusively through the crowd, I spotted Dr. Winters, her presence. Approved through specialized security protocols due to her connection to the MIT program Sophie would be entering. "She's remarkable," Dr. Winters commented quietly when we had a moment of relative privacy. Walter would see himself in her, not just the intellectual capacity but the moral courage. The program is fortunate to have her. I'm the fortunate one, I replied, watching Sophie across the room as she introduced school friends to her brother with natural grace that bridged her compartmentalized worlds. To have both of them. To have survived everything and found our way to this moment. Dr. Winters studied me with the perceptive gaze that had intimidated me during our early interactions years ago. "You've done something extraordinary, you." No, not just surviving what would have broken many people, but creating genuine lives within necessary constraints. Rebecca Cameron isn't just a cover identity anymore. She's a woman of substance and achievement in her own right. The observation aligned with my own reflections on the evolution of my identity beyond the parameters of witness security. Rebecca Cameron had begun as a necessary fiction, but had developed into an authentic expression of capabilities and values that had always existed within me, waiting for circumstances that would allow their emergence. That evening, as we celebrated with a special dinner at Sophie's favorite restaurant, I watched my children laughing together across the table and felt a profound sense of accomplishment that transcended any professional achievement or financial security. Despite extraordinary challenges, threats, and disruptions, They had grown into remarkable young people grounded in values that would serve them throughout their lives: courage, integrity, resilience, and profound appreciation for the relationships and opportunities that truly matter. Later, as Sophie and I walked Rusty around our neighborhood under a canopy of Colorado stars, she expressed the perspective that had emerged through her preparation for MIT and engagement with Walter's legacy. "I used to think we lost everything when we became the Camerons," she said thoughtfully. "Our home, our friends, our identities. But I've realized recently that we gained something more valuable, perspective that most people never experience." "What kind of perspective?" I asked, curious about her evolving understanding. "Most people never question who they really are beyond their names and circumstances. They never have to discover what remains when everything external is stripped away." She smiled up at the brilliant mountain sky. "We had to find out what was essential about ourselves, what couldn't be changed by new names or locations. That's a kind of freedom, isn't it? Knowing your core self isn't dependent on what other people call you or where you happen to live." Her insight struck me as profound beyond her 17 years, a wisdom earned through extraordinary circumstances, but applicable to universal human questions of identity and authenticity. In navigating between Olivia Foster and Sophie Cameron, between her past and future, between necessary secrecy and emerging truth, my daughter had discovered something essential about the nature of self that many people never grasp in lifetimes, unmarked by such dramatic disruption. "It is freedom," I agreed, thinking of my own journey from Elena to Rebecca and the discoveries that transformation had revealed. The freedom to define yourself by your choices and values rather than circumstances, beyond your control. As we completed our walk, returning to the beautiful home that had become genuinely ours, despite its origins and witness security arrangements, I reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought us from that desperate flight from Pinecrest to this moment of peace and possibility. Walter's legacy had transformed our lives in ways neither he nor I could have anticipated when he left me that cryptic letter and the keys to his secret hangar. The technology he preserved would continue to evolve through Sophie's contribution to the specialized MIT program. The justice he sought had been achieved through the prosecutions that dismantled the conspiracy he had spent decades documenting. But perhaps his most meaningful legacy was less tangible: the crucible of character our family had navigated because of his inheritance, the values clarified through adversity, the self-knowledge gained through extraordinary challenge. As Sophie prepared for MIT and her unique connection to Walter's work, as Ethan continued developing his own talents and interests, as I balanced my professional consulting with guiding both children toward their futures, the distinction between our Cameron identities and our Foster origins had become increasingly irrelevant. We had transcended both, becoming people defined not by names or circumstances, but by the courage, integrity, and resilience that had emerged through our extraordinary journey. Walter's final gift hadn't been the technology worth hundreds of millions or even the evidence that exposed corruption at the highest levels. His true legacy was the opportunity he had unknowingly provided for 3 ordinary people to discover their extraordinary capacity to face impossible challenges, adapt to unimaginable circumstances, and emerge not diminished but enhanced by the crucible of transformation. As we entered our home, no longer a witness protection arrangement, but genuinely our place of belonging, I silently thanked my uncle for everything his legacy had cost us and everything it had ultimately given us. The price had been steep, the journey arduous, but the destination had proved worth every sacrifice, revealing strengths and possibilities we might never have discovered without the catalyst of his remarkable inheritance. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.